Hey besties, Monica Ferguson here and welcome to World Domination. This is a safe space for absolute legends who are bold enough and brave enough to go within, to recreate their belief system, to aim high, to chase their wildest dreams and become everything that they are destined to be. This is a space for people who are serious about growth, about healing. We talk about all things mind, body, spirit, and we have the courage to go further than most people even dare to dream. Welcome, let's get into it. Hey, beautiful people, Monica here. Welcome to this week's episode of World Domination. And I really deliberated on, there are a couple of things that I was thinking about, like are really important for us to discuss. And what I'm coming back to today is fundamental, foundational stuff, all right? Now, I'm going to go into this by saying, you know that everything I say to you, bestie, comes from a place of love, all right? But sometimes we need to hear things that we don't want to hear. So you know that it's good when it comes with a disclaimer, right? And I'm being a little bit cheeky, but the other thing that I will, the reason I say that is because I get so many messages from you guys after episodes saying, oh my gosh, I was so triggered by that, Mom, like you triggered me. And that's kind of my job though, right? But when you understand that everything that I'm sharing with you guys is for your empowerment, for your betterment, for you to achieve more and get more out of your life with more ease. This is the work, right? But these are things that we do not talk about, especially in New Zealand. We gloss over them. There are a lot more people enabling you to stay where you are than empowering you to be who you truly are. So, with all that aside, here is the message of today. As within, so without. Now, I'm sure that many of you have heard this phrase before, right? And it sounds nice, but there's a lot of weight to it. This is not just some fluffy sounding nice quote. There is absolute power and psychology to back this up. Now, what do we mean by this? As within, so without, right? What's inside of you is being projected out into the world and is being reflected back to you. Now, how does this happen? Via your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, I know you guys know this, but we're going to recap again. The subconscious mind makes up 95% of your mind, right? And it is responsible for your safety. It is responsible for all the automatic processes that happen for you, like your heart beating, your hair growing, your cells regenerating, all these sorts of things that you don't have to stop and consciously think about all the time. They just happen, right? Now, this is really, really important to understand when we are trying to create any kind of change in our life, because the subconscious mind does not care about your happiness, right? It cares about your safety. And often those two themes are worlds apart, right? If your subconscious mind is like, I just want to keep you safe and in the comfort zone because I know how to protect you. So even if, and let's just throw this out there, even if you have had horrible experiences, let's say you were raised in a really violent home or you had all sorts of trauma and abuse and all sorts of stuff, in a really weird way, your subconscious mind feels more comfortable with you staying in those situations because it knows how to protect you. It knows how to function in those environments. Whereas for you to suddenly step out of that into, a dynamic where it's healthy, where you're loved and supported, that actually feels really scary to the mind because it hasn't been there before. So it wants to keep you where you are. Now, this is why you see people recreating the same patterns that hurt them over and over again, right? It's why we know that we should change. We know that we need to stop drinking. We know that we need to leave these toxic relationships. We know that we need to stop doing certain things that are hurting us, but we can't quite seem to get out of it, right? And so much shame comes with this. And society often shames people like, why does she keep doing that? Why do they keep doing that? Because unconsciously they are wired for it. So this conversation that we're going to have today is not about shame. It is not about self-judgment or criticism or beating yourself up. We have done that our entire lives and it does not work. And simply because the dominant part of your mind, the 95% of your mind, which is responsible for your safety and is running the show, is literally blocking you from moving on, why would you ever beat yourself up? Because there's a part of you that does not feel safe to move from where you are. That is the only reason your circumstances are what they are right now. Okay, so that being said, this is a space for like radical responsibility, but that does not mean radical judgment. We want radical responsibility and radical self-compassion. Because remember too, the subconscious mind is formed from ages 0 to 7. So that means that our programming, effectively, think of it like software, right? Our programming was installed from 0 to 7. Now, if we had parents around us and people around us who taught us how amazing life is, how we are so beautiful and talented and worthy and incredible, and we can do anything that we want, and whatever, there is just money everywhere and everything comes with ease and flow, that would be wonderful. But you probably wouldn't be listening to this if that was the case. And most of us are not taught that, right? Because most people are very unconscious. So even our parents handed down their unconscious limiting beliefs. Things like, you have to struggle, life is so hard, not being good enough, right? How many of us watched our mums hate themselves and criticize their bodies and shame themselves? And then we wonder where that came from within us. Well, we learned it. We observed it, right? We learned this is how you treat yourself. This is how we feel about our bodies. This is how we speak to ourselves. And until someone steps up and breaks the cycle, it continues. And everyone just continues living in this very unconscious way, just accepting beliefs, accepting things as true. And once they're in our unconscious, they just play out until we say, actually, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Okay, because here's the thing. When we understand how the subconscious mind works, then we can understand how to make it work for us. Okay, so as within, so without, right? If our external world is a projection of our internal beliefs, which it is, what if we just updated our beliefs? Yes. Yes, I hear you all say, let's do that. Now, here's something else I want to introduce you guys to, and this is a concept that I learned via NLP, my NLP training, which is neuro-linguistic programming, right? And they taught me about this idea called generalize, distort, and delete. And this is psychology. This is what our mind does, right? Because every second we are inundated with so many pieces of information, right? So many things happening around us that our physical brain actually can't handle and interpret it all at once. So what it does is it has to filter it down. So, I mean, I've read heaps of different estimates about how many pieces of information there are, but it's in the millions. And our physical brain can only process about 132 pieces per second. Okay, so that's a drastic reduction. And the way that our mind decides what to eliminate out of our awareness and what to let in is based on our belief system. So because our mind is neutral, our mind, remember, it doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care what's positive or negative. Our mind is neutral. So what this means is if you have a belief that says, I am not good enough, right? Your mind, in this filtering process, here's something that someone says and it says, oh, yep, that fits our belief, so we're going to let that in. So what happens is you have evidence of your belief and you go, see, this is why I'm not good enough. This person thinks I'm not good enough. But first things first, how much good did you actually block out because your mind literally rejected it? But also, how much of this came as a result of your belief? Because if I'm being honest with you guys, over the years, the amount of times that I have had to seriously check myself because I was in a situation where I was convinced that something had happened a certain way. And I had an emotional reaction, right? And when I calmed down and I looked at it from a different perspective, I realized, holy shit, man, I was so wrong. Actually, that's not even what they said. That's not how they meant it. But I took it that way because that was the belief that I had. Right? So if you believe that you are a worthless piece of trash and someone says to you, you're so beautiful, you're not even going to receive that. you're only going to receive the negative stuff, right? Because you've literally primed your brain for this. And this matters because when we want to change our life, we have to update our operating system, our subconscious mind, because this is the thing that's happening at an unconscious level. So we can't consciously manage every single thought. 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are unconscious, and most of them, so according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says that 90% of our thoughts on average are the same as the ones that we had the day before. So you know what that means? Your results are going to be the same, right? Because you're still thinking the same way, you're still projecting the same way, you're still operating at the same level of consciousness as yesterday. So did you like the results that you got from yesterday or not? Right? So the cool thing with this, when we start to actually put this into practice, you realize how quickly you can change your external world by shifting your internal thoughts, beliefs, stories, everything. And when you start actually deliberately thinking thoughts and deliberately shifting old stories and old beliefs out and replacing them with things that you actually want, these things start to shift in your reality. Right now, I'll share like a stupid story to highlight this. I remember I heard this stuff years ago, right? And I was kind of like, really? That sounds a bit woo-woo, whatever. And I was playing with this idea of the word magnetic, right? And I was like, I am magnetic. And I just really affirmed this to myself, like, I'm magnetic. And I was like, okay, so something in the external world is going to reflect this back to me, right? So a couple of days later, I went into the supermarket and I had my winter jacket on. And as I walked out of the store, I set the alarm off. Like there was like a metal thing on my zip that set the alarm off. And the lady, and I was like, oh, do you need to like pat me down or whatever? And she was like, oh, don't worry. She's like, you're just so magnetic. And I just had a little chuckle to myself. But the thing is that on a serious note, right, when we start shifting our unconscious beliefs, our subconscious belief system, our entire world changes. When you believe that you are worthy, talented, incredible, that you have something to offer the world, guess what? That reflects back to you. Your mind literally filters your reality differently. So instead of seeking out negative things that you don't want, it's seeking out things that you want, which is then validating your belief, which makes it easier and easier to tell that new story because you've got this evidence all around you validating this back to you. Now, immediately, I can feel the resistance from some of you guys being like, oh my God, I can't even imagine speaking to myself in a way like that. I'm beautiful, I'm amazing, I'm worthy, I'm incredible, I'm so talented, I'm a gift to the world. Imagine saying these things to yourselves. Do you feel resistance? How much resistance? Right? Now, this is the problem. And this is the thing that gets to be addressed first. And self-awareness is key, right? When we want to start creating change in our life, we need to first become aware of what is going on in our life right now. Like, what areas of life are you wanting to change? What are the patterns that are playing out? What can you learn about yourself right now? Right? Remember, without shame, simply with compassion and observation, what are the themes that have been repeatedly playing out in your life? Is it anxiety? Is it toxic relationships? Is it a lack of money? Is it self-hatred? Whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, we're simply bringing our awareness to it, right? Like, okay, I've noticed that I've been really struggling with self-worth for so long. I've been really struggling with my friendships or my money or my work or whatever it is. Just simply becoming aware of it, okay? And then we want to start becoming aware of your beliefs and the stories that you're telling yourself. Because we assign meaning to everything, right? So often something will happen in our external world and we then make it mean something. And it is just as easy to assign a different meaning to it that actually empowers us. But because most of us are living in a very unconscious way, we're just letting our thoughts think us, right? We're not thinking our thoughts. We never challenge this stuff. And then we continue to get evidence of things that we don't want. And we go, see, and we use that evidence to justify our belief. But the problem is that it's what's coming from within us. The external is just the reflection of that. So change yourself on the inside and your external world must reflect. This is a universal law. This is quantum physics. This is not fluff, right? This is not fluff at all. So, where to begin? Okay. So, I want to talk about self-talk a little bit because this is where people have serious resistance. And I remember one of my first coaches, and this was before I became a coach. I think I probably had a podcast at that time that I was so scared about because I was like, oh my gosh, like people are actually listening to this. Who am I? Who am I to have a podcast? Who am I to think that my voice matters? Who am I? Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. So I was still taking the action, but I didn't have the thoughts to support it, right? So you can guess my results were pretty average because the subconscious mind is there to keep us safe. So because my mind didn't actually feel safe for me to really be successful or be seen, based on childhood trauma, where I literally had learned that if you are seen and heard and you annoy someone, they might kill you. This was literally the belief that I had in an unconscious level. So guess what? My mind did a really good job at making sure that I never got too far. I never really got successful. I sabotaged at the key moments, right? Which is really just my mind trying to protect me because it didn't feel safe. So as I learned that, it's not that I'm a failure and I'm not good enough and no one gives a shit about what I have to say. The problem is that there's a part of me that doesn't really feel safe yet. So my work is to love that part of myself that is still a wounded little kid that learned that people hurt you and harm you and it's not safe. And I started to work on these beliefs, and then guess what? As within, so without. My results started to shift because I started to feel safe to be successful. And now this podcast has reached 65 countries and is on the radio. Amazing, right? So cool. But that only happened because I changed the belief first. I remember like when I took this podcast onto the radio, and the amazing producer that I work with, shout out Marina, she can share the story too. We actually went into the studio and I'd never really recorded podcasts in the same room with people just like listening. And I freaked out. She was sitting there just recording, and my head, it was like, I was aware that she was there, but the bigger fear was that I knew it was going on the radio, right? So it triggered every part of me that didn't feel safe, that felt afraid, like, oh my God, more people are going to hear this. So there were still parts of me at that time that still didn't feel safe to be heard. And so when I explored that, I asked myself, what part of me doesn't feel safe? And it was the 10-year-old version of me. And so I literally, in my mind, I asked her, like, what are you afraid of? And she said that if you say things that people don't like, they're going to hurt you. They're going to get angry because of horrible things that I observed as a child, like violence, right? Now, if you add to that, the sort of work that I do, I trigger people. I hit people in their wounds, right? I ask the hard, direct questions that get results, but I have to often say things that people don't want to hear. And while it always comes from a loving place, I do get people projecting on me every now and then. You do post something on the internet and someone sees it and takes their shit out on you. And so I had to really work with this part of myself, right, to heal that. Because if I didn't heal that part of me that didn't feel safe, I was never ever going to be able to get the results that I wanted. Because my subconscious mind simply would not allow it. At some point, the subconscious mind, it will override any effort that you take, because remember, the subconscious mind's job is to keep you safe. So if it feels like, oh, this is getting too unsafe, it will somehow hinder you. And what we've seen, people that keep pushing, taking the action, doing the things without actually working at the unconscious level, horrible things happen. They go bankrupt all of a sudden. They sabotage in a huge way. They break a bone. Their body will physically stop them from being able to take action. It's very interesting and not an accident at all. So, okay, to go back to the self-talk piece. One of my very first coaches, I remember, this was when I was still, I had the podcast, but I wasn't doing well because I was terrified and I didn't feel worthy. I was still working as a photographer at that point, but I knew that I wanted to work with people in a deeper way, right? So I was delving into this coaching world. I think I'd done like a life coaching diploma at that time, and I had some mental health stuff done and counseling and stuff, but I hadn't got into the deep subconscious stuff yet. And my coach said to me on the phone, she said, I want you to give me 20 reasons right now why you are an amazing coach. Go. And I was like, what? And I was like dripping with sweat and freaking out. And I'd never, ever been put on the spot like that in my entire life. And it was such a powerful exercise because, man, like, did it make me so aware of the thoughts that I had about myself, the stories that I'd been telling myself, and the fact that it was so hard for me to come up with positive things about myself showed me, actually, this is not good. Like, no wonder I'm not having a good experience right now. I can't even give myself, praise. I can't even affirm my own strengths and abilities. How the frick am I meant to go out into the world if I can't even support myself? How am I meant to support others, right? And this is the really interesting thing, especially for people in New Zealand, and you would have heard me speak about this heaps, the tall poppy syndrome. Because what happens is, as we realize that, oh my gosh, my external world is literally a reflection of my internal world. So if I think that I'm, worthless and not good enough, that is all you're ever going to be able to achieve, right? So we have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe in our abilities. We have to think that we have amazing things to offer. And now this is not arrogance, right? We can still do this in a humble way, understanding that our gifts and our talents and things have been given to us. They're a gift for us to take into the world, right? So we can be grateful, but we have to own them. We are no good to anyone if we're sitting at home feeling like we're average and like we have nothing to offer and we don't matter, because that is a straight up lie. The chances of you being born are 1 in 400 trillion. You are created exactly as you are. No one else like you will ever exist again, in the past, present, or future. So to sit around going, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not special, is just a load of crap, and we have to stop doing this. But again, New Zealand culture encourages it. It encourages very average, low-aiming thinking. It does. And every single client, one of the first things that they say is, oh my God, what are other people going to think about me? If I actually take this on, if I actually start that business or write that book or pursue this goal that I have, and it's more than a goal, right? It's a calling. Desire literally means of the Father. What you desire is meant for you. This is not some random idea that just happened to pop into your head that you haven't been able to stop thinking about. It's meant for you. It's trying to come through you. But if you keep blocking it, like, what are you doing? If you keep blocking it with your own self-doubt and negative thinking, stop that, right? We need you. We need you to be in your power, living this thing that you've been called to create on the earth. Imagine if everyone was doing this. But most people let fear run their whole life, right? And this perception of security and safety, they tolerate crap, they accept crap, they do things they don't want to do for their whole life because they think it's safe and responsible. It's not, right? Anything can be taken away from us at any moment. The most responsible thing you can do is actually step into who you were literally created to be. Okay, so this is why we have to go back to our internal voice, our internal monologue, our relationship to ourselves, right? Because that is what is getting projected out. As within, so without. What do you truly believe about yourself? What do you truly think about yourself? And I would encourage you to hit pause for a second and actually really reflect on that. This matters. And what I would also encourage you to do is to challenge what comes up, right? So often what people find is their first thoughts will be like a bunch of negative things, right? Usually, for people that have not done this sort of work or they're just starting, it's going to be a lot of negative crap. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you start challenging those beliefs, you'll find that a lot of them are not true. You actually don't believe that they're true. The thing is that it's just become a habit. You're so used to criticizing yourself, shaming yourself, feeling like you're not good enough, right? That you've just programmed your mind. You've built a neural pathway where your brain just defaults to that thought because you've thought it so many times. So you can stop that immediately. And there's an example that always comes to mind whenever I think about this. And it was years ago now, but it was a client that I was working with who's just exceptional, an exceptional human who did huge things. And I remember her saying to me, I'm not a good enough mum. And I was like, is that actually true? And she said, no. But think about this, right? Because then I said to her, okay, give me 10 reasons why you're an amazing mum. And she rattled off all these great things that she does for her kids, right? Beautiful, beautiful. End of cycle right there, right? That unconscious thought is now conscious. So now it becomes a choice. You can't unsee it once you see it, right? But she also had to have a lot of courage to sit with that and own the things that she's good at, right? And we have to get over this because simply put, if we want to sit around feeling sorry for ourselves and being negative and criticizing and shaming ourselves all day, every day, that is the life that we are creating. And we are creating it, right? So now that we've had this conversation, becomes a bit of a choice. Do we continue to, run with these unconscious belief systems and programs and thoughts, or do we choose to start flipping them and choosing other things? And I want to come back to the subconscious, the role of the subconscious mind, because this literally liberated me. My entire life, up until probably the last 2 to 3 years, detested myself with a passion. And let's be clear, the work doesn't stop. I still do my own mindset work every single day. I still check in on my beliefs and my thoughts, and because I'm always pushing, I'm always uncovering new layers of fear or doubt or whatever it is, right, that I get to work through. So it doesn't stop. But that initial shift where you stop running from yourself and you kind of turn and you face yourself and you're like, whoa, okay, I actually really hate myself. This is what I uncovered. I loathed myself. I hated everything. I had so much shame. This was the big one. This was the one that had me just sobbing into a journal, right, for months probably, when I realized I had so much shame because I had all of these feelings like I should be further along, right? I should have more. I can't believe this is my life. I know that I'm here for more, but I'm obviously not good enough because I've tried so hard to make these things happen and I just can't seem to make anything work out. Obviously, it's because I'm unlovable and unworthy and not good enough. What other possible reason could there be, right? And when I started to understand the role of the unconscious, the subconscious mind, I set myself free when I realized, oh my gosh, the reason that my big goals and things weren't happening, even in regards to love and relationships, these things weren't happening because I did not feel safe. You know why? Because I had experienced such extensive trauma that my mind was like, yeah, nah, we're not going near men. Men are not safe. They're dangerous. They hurt you. They'll probably kill you. Everyone leaves you. Everyone abandons you. So as your subconscious mind, as we're trying to keep you safe and protected, we're just going to keep men out of your life. So any man that comes into your life, you're only going to be attracted to wounded men because you'll get rid of them and they can't hurt you. But you're simply not a match to someone that's healthy, right? So we're going to repel those people, and because you don't believe you're worthy of someone good anyway, so we're going to repel these people out of your life. And so layer by layer, I started to heal, right? And I use these subconscious tools that I work with my clients with, and I healed. And now I have the greatest man in the world. And that process was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I think it's the most proud I am of anything that I've ever achieved. Learning to love and be loved, genuinely, I think was the hardest thing I've ever learned how to do. Because it required every part of me. The healing that happened, the rewriting of beliefs, it was immense work, right? But here's my point, you guys. It all comes from within us. Our beliefs dictate our life. Our thoughts create our reality. They truly do. And we have the power to forgive ourselves for things that we did when we didn't know any better. Our subconscious mind was always trying to keep us safe. You are not a failure. You have not wasted time. You have not gone too far. You can turn everything around right now. I promise you, I am proof of this. And so if you want support, you guys, reach out to me. I have single sessions, 1 month, 3 month. We can work on this together for your particular set of issues, whatever's going on for you. There's also a self-study journaling program that you can go and get on my website today that will guide you through these questions and help you actually program your mind and give you practical things to do. But I just want you guys to know that the time of shame and self-judgment is done, right? That does not work. What you need is compassion and understanding. Self-love, become your own best friend. Shift those beliefs, those stories, those fears. Watch your entire life change. You can absolutely do this. I love you and I believe in you 100%. See you next week. And that is a wrap. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for being here. And please let me know your aha moments. I want to hear all about them. For extra support, make sure you're following me on TikTok and Instagram at @TheMonicaFerguson. Check out the School of Greatness for self-study courses. And of course, if you want one-on-one mentoring, just DM me and I would love to have a chat with you. Go and slay the day. Thank you for being you. See you soon.